Welcome to Hockey Night in New York, where Islanders hockey always reigns supreme. Whether you were raised at the barn in Uniondale or born in the stable at Belmont, Hockey Night in New York is your home for all things Isles. Now, let's drop the puck and get this party started.
Ladies and gentlemen, it is Hockey Night in New York. Welcome to the program, everyone. It is Sunday, January 22nd, 2023. Coming at you live from Floored Media in Rockville Center. Another big show coming up for you tonight here on Long Island. Islander alumni Adrian Aucoin will be joining us. Can't wait to talk to him. Sitting down with me tonight is Mr. Chris Botta. My name is Sean Cuthbert. How we doing?
I'm doing great. Born in the stable in Belmont.
That's right.
I keep on thinking about what that means.
How do you feel about that,
Who's
Chris?
born in the? If you're born in, well, okay, go ahead.
Your fandom, Chris? You gotta think outside the box.
I like it. Go.
Well, that's good. All right. Well, thanks everybody for joining the show here at Hockey Night in New York. Want to thank all our sponsors, starting with Blue Line Deli and Bagels. We are proud to be presented by Blue Line Deli and Bagels, located at 719 West Jericho Turnpike in Huntington, 217 Carlton Avenue in East Islip, and of course, UBS Arena at Belmont. Also proud to be sponsored by Lost Farmer Brewing Company, located at 63A 2nd Street in Mineola. And proud to be sponsored by brand new sponsor Main Street Board Game Cafe in Huntington Village on Long Island's North Shore. Games for sale and for play, food and drink, beer and wine, fun and friends. Bring the magic of phones down, eyes up, tabletop board games to your family. Our staff will help you find the right game for you, from old favorites to the hottest new releases. We have everything from strategic to easy party games. Get off your screens and unplug your game for a night your family will remember. Looking for meetups to join? Our Magic the Gathering, Dungeons & Dragons, or Game Night Live communities are welcoming for all. We also do parties and corporate events, and we're located at 307 Main Street in Huntington Village. Go to mainstboardgamecafe.com for more information. Main Street Board Game Cafe. Find your crowd. Unplug your game.
So let's get right to it, Sean.
Oh, okay.
I mean, we don't need to recap the four games. We know they're 1-5-3 in their last 9. How do you feel at this very moment on Sunday night, going into a big game against the Toronto Maple Leafs on Monday, about your New York Islanders?
Oh, I feel great, Chris.
Oh, good. Okay, good.
This,
End the show. Let's.
This past week was, it's the first show being done this season where they had not won at least one game in the week previous. Okay. So they have 4 games that they played, lost them all. We all know that, and you can deliberate over which was the most crushing. But the point I wanted to make from this week was, you actually had a clip that we pulled from a show earlier in the season. You had said that, when the Islanders are up against it, essentially, they always find a way to win that game that kind of brings them back into the mix. And I think Monday night, the beginning of this week, was that game with the Washington Capitals. Divisional, they were trying to catch them. That was a big 2 points. I mean, they were supposed to win that game before the game started. Then they went up 3-0. They were really supposed to win that game. They end up collapsing. They lose it in overtime. They give the 2 points to the Caps. They only get 1. And I think that's the first time this season where they failed to kind of follow that pattern of, when they're up against the wall a little bit, they kind of find their way back and they start rattling off wins. And that was, I think, a critical game for the Islanders. It could have been a look in the mirror moment for them too. Maybe they pick it up for the rest of the week. That didn't happen. They just continued to spiral for the rest of the week. And now you have, you check out social media and everybody's kind of up in arms about where this team is going now. So how do I feel about the Islanders right now? Not great.
Okay. No, and I understand that. And listen, the team right now, they're breaking down. The wheels are coming off, all those things. It's alarming. It's troubling. The fans, observers, everybody has every right and every reason to be concerned. The thing I'm coming at, and I mentioned it last week too, is that in this story of a season and doing this every week, it is just way too early to start talking about fire Lou Lamoriello, make all these changes, do all this. The fans don't need me to read the standings for them, but I would suggest that everybody do take a look at them. And I know there's in some cases the other teams have games in hand, but the Islanders are 6 points behind the Rangers. They are 3 points out of a playoff spot. The team currently in that playoff spot is Pittsburgh. Pittsburgh is not very good. The reason why they are still in it is because some of these teams around them had their stumbles already.
Mm-hmm.
Florida, look like, would they ever figure it out? Buffalo,
right.
Buffalo's all over the place.
Mm-hmm.
Pittsburgh, the Islanders are having theirs now. I'm not here to say and to be Mr. Happiness here. Nobody's ever freaking accused me of that. But I'm not here to say that this is a great team and that they're going to make it or any of that happy horse shit, okay? But there are 34 games to go. We need to stop temporarily with the whining. The broadcast last night started talking about how tough the schedule is. I'm not shading here. I'm going to be specific about Brendan and Butch meaning well. The schedule's so tough, and now they have Toronto, and now they have Vegas. They said this with a couple minutes left. Yeah, they have Toronto and they have Vegas this week. They also have Ottawa, who sucks. They suck. The Islanders might suck too, but so that's an even game. And then they have Detroit at home, and Detroit doesn't beat anybody either. But it's like we get into this mode in the country here, Islanders country, where it's oh no, and get rid of everybody, and this schedule's too tough to the point we're ignoring the 2 games in the middle of a 4-game schedule. So things to understand here, and I know people do, but Lou Lamoriello is not getting fired. He's not getting fired in the next month, 2, 3. Teams rarely, if ever, in the NHL fire their general managers in the middle of the season. And of all the guys who might get it in the middle of the season, Lou Lamoriello is not one.
Right.
Of them. Again, there will come a day for that discussion. Right now, I believe if you're a fan, if you're an interested observer in this team, what you want to see is them fight, including Lou Lamoriello and the coaching staff, to get into the dance. If that means coming in 8th by 1 point, fine. But right now you're playing to get in, to get the experience, so that Holmstrom plays and Ratu plays and maybe 1 or 2 other players, including a player in Bridgeport who isn't here right now, and Bulldog or somebody like that. Like you have to play for something, and with 34 games left, 68 points on the line, it's just too early to get into the, let's start trading off guys. Last year, Lou wound up not trading anybody, and I understand that was a mistake. Clutterbuck, for example, but my expectations aren't there yet. I think we just have to take a little bit of a breath and see how these next few weeks play out.
Well, not only did he not trade Clutterbuck, he signed him. He extended him. So he's a guy he wanted in the locker room regardless of what was going on last season. But look, you know better than anybody else, this is a what have you done for me lately kind of business.
Yeah, sure.
And the Islanders haven't done much for the fan base yet. So far this week, lately, they haven't done much, right? And look, I mean, you see it all the time, right? They go on a 4 or 5 game winning streak. When are we trading for Patrick Kane? When are we getting Bo Horvat? So we can fly further up the standings. They drop 4 or 5 in a row, or right now, they win 2 out of the first 11 games in January. Now it's who are we unloading? Are we going to retool? Or are we going to rebuild? You got the trade deadline coming up in less than 2 months. What are they going to do? And look, that's the nature of fandom, whether it's Islander fans or otherwise. But, I mean, that's just the roller coaster of being a sports fan, maybe even a New York sports fan if you're a Jets, Mets, or Islander fan, because that's how this thing seems to go.
That's why it worked out really nicely that Adrian Aucoin is going to join us. This is a guy who's been on good teams that have slumped, on power plays that have slumped, and I really wanted to get his perspective in addition to talking about his time on the island. One more thing is, and I understand that Lane Lambert is not going to be John Tortorella in the post game with the speeches, or even Barry Trotz for that matter. You are what you are, and that's fine. I would even suggest to Lane that he could dial it down even more in terms of the words. He's getting into traps where, as Andrew mentioned on our show last week, that he admitted about the guys, maybe grabbing the sticks too tight. I think it's time for Lane, who again seems like a quality person and a quality hockey man, to stand up, stand tall, push back a little bit, show a little feistiness, be cooperative, be accessible. That's part of the job. But he does not have to get caught up in all the – listen, if I was there, I'd be asking negative questions too.
Sure.
I did that job too.
Right.
And I've done it with coaches. I had my moments with Tortorella when I was on the Rangers. But Lane's thing is, hey, Lane, don't get caught up in that. You can give your brief answers. This idea that is the answer to the question, is the team fragile? No, it's not. And they're not. They're just not that good. And scoring's getting a little tougher to come by. Fragile? Don't let them put those words in your mouth. Don't, about grabbing the sticks too tight. Is the message getting through? He did answer that quickly to whoever asked him that last night. But these are the things you're going to be hit with right now and maybe even again tomorrow night. Don't fall for it, man. You need to stand up and also send a strong public image to your team.
He's definitely not buying into the negative narrative. I mean, he's definitely defended the team after these losses and said, I thought we played a good game. We just didn't win. I thought we played a good game. I
don't always love that.
I thought we're working hard. Well, what is he supposed to say anyway? Yeah. You're right. We suck. Let's fold it up.
Yeah.
Right? So I don't know. I mean, he's in a tough spot, and I know a lot of people are, if they haven't jumped off the ledge already, they're already teetering towards it because again, that's the nature of the beast here. But I mean, you make a valid point, and it's a good one. There's still a lot of season left, but unfortunately, there's just nothing right now in this last stretch of games that's inspiring the fan base to say, yeah, they can turn it around. But you're right. I mean, teams go through this, and look, would it really shock anybody if they started scoring goals again and putting a couple of wins together?
It wasn't that long ago, buddy, where I was getting replies that, see what happens when you have a coach who lets the guys move the puck, who let the DJ, so I get it. We're fans. If I wouldn't want everybody to play back everything we've said on this show in the last 12 weeks, I get it. But we don't know if this is a bad blip right now, that it'll look back that way.
Right.
I can't say that this team is done. I get it. They're in the block of mediocrity with all those other teams, Florida and Buffalo, and I didn't include Washington in there and Pittsburgh. But is it over? No. So let's see what happens. I would keep on working in the youth, give them more responsibility, give them more ice time. The Clutterbuck injury is unfortunate because he's been a good Islander, but it is an opportunity now. Give these guys a chance. And listen, it's a baby step. It would be a level move, Sean. But if they got just 4 points out of 8 this week, it's 2 wins, they'll start to feel better about themselves, and that's important.
Yeah, no doubt about it. All good points. But, folks, we got a break because we got Adrian Aucoin, former Islander, joining us here on the program. So I want to thank you all for tuning in here live at twitch.tv/HockeyNightNY. And, of course, later on, your favorite podcast providers. We'll be right back.
I don't want to hear it. It's over. I can't believe they fell short again.
Yeah, but they played so well. They made it to the semifinals 2 years in a row.
The semifinals aren't the cup. God damn it, I hate those Lightning.
They'll get another shot at it next year.
I don't even want to talk about it anymore, all right? They lost, okay? Let me just sit here and enjoy the one thing that makes me a little bit happy. This fresh, delicious, tasty, meaty, turkey-filled Blue Line combo. I eat 3 every day to help keep me strong.
Hey, Donnie, can I have one of those?
Coming right up. Talk about a blast from the Blue Line.
Blue Line Deli and Bagels. Our goal is to make you a hero.
Miss the days of mixtapes and arcades? Love the taste of a bold IPA or maybe an ice-cold lager? There's a place where all of those magical things come together. Lost Farmer Brewing Company. At 63A East 2nd Street in the heart of Mineola, Lost Farmer combines a love of the 80s and a passion for quality beer to create brews that can only be described as gnarly, radical, and totally tubular. The retro vibe of the tasting bar will amp up your nostalgia while the blend of both local and exotic ingredients amp up your taste buds. Beer not your thing? Crack open a can of cider or sip a Chardonnay on the extended patio. Order up from the snack menu. You can even bring your own. If you're more of a homebody, pick up a growler to go or order online at lostfarmerbrewing.com. And for all of Long Island's hockey fans, Lost Farmer created the delicious Stable Shaker American Lager to celebrate the newly built UBS Arena at Belmont Park. Whether you're at the stable for a hockey game, concert, or a comedy show, You can find Stable Shaker by can and draft around the arena. So raise a cup to the next cup with Lost Farmer Brewery, the future of Long Island craft beer.
Thanks for giving some time to our sponsor. Ready to talk more Isles? The train rolls on right here on Hockey Night in New York.
Welcome back, and we are really happy to be joined by the former Islanders NHL defenseman, Adrian Aucoin. Adrian, how you doing, bud?
I'm great. Thanks for having me, guys.
Thanks. It's Chris Botta here with Sean Cuthbert. Adrian, can you just tell the fans, like right now, I know you're busy with your family. Can you just give the fans a little bit of an idea of what you're up to these days?
So I'm back in Chicago. I know we had I believe the alumni weekend was this weekend. I couldn't make it. I have my oldest daughter's back at University of Iowa. She's studying nursing in her last semester. I got my oldest boy playing hockey at Harvard. My next daughter, she's still home. She's heading off to her second semester, freshman at Wisconsin. I was just in Detroit with my middle boy for his hockey tournament, or just a couple games. And then my youngest boy had 4 games here this weekend. So
amazing.
Keeping busy somehow.
Yes, I know you're, when I do reach out, I can always tell you got a lot going on. So I wanted to first bring you on so that you could share your experience as a veteran player and an Islander, and somehow bring it along to what the team is going through right now. They've hit they've hit a slump here. They're 1-5-3 in their last 9. You were on good teams. I think of the Lavi's second season with the Islanders, where there were major bumps along the way. How does a team try to find its way out when everyone's saying the ship is sinking and trades need to be made? What is it like inside that room, or what was it like inside the rooms that you were with as a player? And how can they try, what are some of the things that they could do to get out of it?
Yeah, well, I mean, I think the worst thing you can do a lot of times is kind of wait for something to happen. You get in that mode where, guys start talking about potential trades and picking up someone, and just, okay, when this happens, when there's a shakeup, we'll start to kick it into gear. And that kind of becomes a little bit of a curse. We definitely different situation when I was with the Islanders. And even by our 3rd year, I would say we were still kind of creeping up, and expectations weren't as high as, the Islanders are now. I mean, they have a good roster. They've got great coaches, management, everything. And we had that. It was just, we were coming still, as you remember, off those dark years where, everything seemed to be kind of, oh, they're doing great. That's awesome. Oh, they hit a little bump. Oh, it's not so bad. We didn't expect as much. But, for those guys, they do have some good veterans in the room. They have some good leadership. Obviously they're not scoring a ton of goals, but everybody's playing well. They got great goalies. I think everything's there. And sometimes after Christmas or the holidays, you kind of get these lulls, and, I'm hopeful that they can just get out of that funk.
Yeah, I mean, is there any reason, I just trying to make the case before we went to break and put you on, that just as other teams like Florida's had their slow starts, they're starting to come on, Buffalo's all over the place, Washington and Pittsburgh, that this could be the Islanders' funk, but then they get out of it. Have you seen enough of this team in the last 3 years and this season to give you the reason to believe that they could get out of it?
Well, absolutely. I mean, like I said, when you look at their top guys, I mean, they have guys that can score who haven't scored a ton. So that's a positive in a weird way, because that they have the ability. So hopefully a little bit more puck luck. Their goaltending is always going to be there. They play a great system where they don't allow a ton. So it's just, I think things just have to kind of start clicking, and it could be timing. It could be everything. It could be lineups. It could be, just the line combinations. It could be guys just, maybe guys are playing with bumps and bruises. Like, really a lot of times you don't really know. And sometimes you'll get one guy back healthy, and that'll change the dynamic of the lineup.
As much time has passed, Adam Pelech has been out of this lineup. He's their best defensive defenseman. They have Dobson and they have Pulak, and this is a team with some good defenders. And I started thinking, we actually were talking about only a week or so ago about the group that you had with Kenny Janssen, with Yanni Nienema, with Martinek. Just such a great group. Roman Hammerlick. How can I forget the Hammer? And I guess perhaps the analogy, and you could correct me if there's a better one, would be as if that group, losing Pellick would be like missing Kenny Janssen for 4 or 5 weeks. What does as good a group as that might have been, how does that impact the team when you lose somebody that good?
Well, when you lose someone who has been kind of a real, let's say, a glue guy to the lineup, who plays that way, obviously it's going to be, by committee that you have to replace them. There's not going to be one kid you're going to call up, or a lot of times that's when some young guys will step up and, obviously take on a bigger role, but not replaceable. So that makes a huge difference. And I think especially with, the way the game is going with the scoring and the ability of these forwards to score now almost at will, across the league, when you take a guy like that out of the lineup, it affects your team and especially even your goaltending. So definitely a key loss for the team.
Hey, Adrian, Sean here. Absolute pleasure to have you on the show here tonight.
Thanks.
Yeah, for sure. So, look, the 2001-2002 team was a bit of a resurgence for this franchise back then. Like you actually, I was being nice.
It's a resuscitation.
As you referenced earlier, you were coming out of some dark times there. But it was a lot of fun for the fans. I mean, there was so much turnover between yourself coming in draft weekend, Alexei Yashin, Michael Pekka, Chris Osgood, Sean Bates, probably some more. And you had a rookie coach in Peter Laviolette, and you guys put it together really quickly. And you had obviously a very successful season getting back to the playoffs. How did you guys put that together so quickly? Because I think, the fans' expectations obviously went up because of guys like yourself coming in. But the fact that you put it together so quick, you had an 11-1-1-1 record back when there were still ties going on. And how did you guys just manage to tie that all together coming in through camp and everything and having the season that you had?
Well, I mean, it really was a group of misfits when you think about it, right? You start with Yashin, who was kind of, I'm not going to say an outcast from Ottawa, but obviously something wasn't working there, right? Pex kind of had his time in Buffalo was dwindling. I had come from, my first solid, few career years in Vancouver, then went to Tampa, thought I was going to be there for a while, only spent, a cup of coffee there. Then you had guys like Sean Bates, who came up from the minors. You had Ozzy, who came in from off waivers, I believe, right? It was just kind of that makeup of, even like I'm not sure if Mark Parrish was our leading goal scorer, but remember when he got traded, it was like the year before he criticized the fans for not cheering them on.
Right.
Like there was so many different parts, right? And then of course, when you look at the decor, like you were talking about, obviously we had Roman Hammerlick, who was like a stud. Kenny Janssen was like a stud that actually for some reason nobody really knew about, or they didn't, I guess, know how good he was, right? And then from there, obviously a guy like Cairns, one of the toughest guys in the league. Then obviously Radek Martinek, who just became quietly, I say that, tongue in cheek because he never spoke, but quietly like one of the most solid, just steady guys that we had throughout all those years. So there was a lot of kind of weird parts that just clicked. And we had, I would say, way more character than people kind of realize. And a lot of it was because, I think if you take Yashin out of the mix and probably Pex, who was a Selke award winner, but I would still kind of dare to say not a true number one line guy. We had a bunch of second through third line guys and some fourth line guys. So we just kept going. And it was almost, obviously it was enjoyable, but it was almost kind of like a running joke in our locker room because it was like a bunch of guys who had okay careers. And then all of a sudden we were all having career years all at the same time. And it was, obviously I think Lavi had a big part of that. I think he was one of the first coaches at the time that I played that was really like to open it up, and he wanted D-men involved in everything. He basically coaches, I think he was a few years ahead of his time then. And it made for a fun style. And obviously we had a lot of fun on the ice too.
Oh yeah, it was a lot of fun watching you guys that year. There's no doubt about it, and that all kind of crescendoed with the first round series against the Toronto Maple Leafs. Just from a fan's point of view, an NHL fan's point of view, what a series to watch. Just the hatred that seemed to boil over during the series and the back and forth. Every home team winning, it goes to Game 7. What was it like being a part of that series, especially on Long Island, for what was a rabid fan base that was waiting to get back to the playoffs?
Yeah, well, it was crazy, and it's still to this day crazy to me because it's probably the most talked about series that a team didn't win. I mean, it just
right.
People, it was by far the most fun hockey I've ever played. For a lot of guys who hadn't been there before, or guys who had been in playoffs, it was just you were thrown into the fire. Every game was, they're literally, you talk about like blood, sweat, tears. That really was every game. There was ice bags after every game. I remember guys getting IVs after game to try to replenish, rehydrate. It was, obviously for the Islander fan base, it was amazing because they hadn't been there in so long. And I think most of us, like we said, we were kind of the band of misfits coming in, a lot of times playing on the road at the old Coliseum. You'd stay at the Marriott, you'd walk across. There weren't that many fans. The team wasn't doing great. So it was such a huge resurgence that it was awesome. But add the fact that we were playing against the big bad Maple Leafs that nobody wants to see win, just brought it to a whole new level. And they had a really good team. They had a tough team too. So it just created such a great atmosphere for us. And like I said, they won, they went on to move, and they've played a lot of great hockey since. But for us lonely little misfits, it was definitely one of a great memory.
And to piggyback off that and kind of key on the fans, like you said, they come from the dark days prior. The building was probably empty for the first half of the season or whatever it was. But once the wins started coming, and then the fans started coming back in droves, how was your experience with the fan base, which I'm sure, fully, embraced you guys as you guys started winning, and it looked like, wow, we have a team here. We got a shot at the playoffs here. How was that?
Yeah, well, I had the luxury of playing for 7 different franchises, and fans are great everywhere. Like NHL fans are awesome. But I truly believe the Islander fans that were around then were probably the most hardcore fans that I've ever dealt with. And they were so desperate to have, that quality of hockey back. And it's true. And it was so much fun. I mean, I remember going and doing just a fan bowling night with some of these fans, and like just meeting them and listen. Like you would literally, they would talk a lot of times you go to these places, they want to hear what you have to say, and they're kind of quiet and they're shy. These events were like so fan driven, and they were so excited. It was a lot of fun. And my personal highlights from a lot of those years were having like Clark Gillies and Bobby Nye around, because they were telling us how when they played, a lot of these same fans were there, and how we had to kind of like reconnect with them because those other years kind of got lost, on the side tracks and whatnot. So just even having guys like that around, it really helped us to kind of realize how big and how passionate like those years were.
And what was life like for you and your family on Long Island while you were playing here as well?
Well, we loved it. Like I said, it was definitely interesting when I got traded there because, I believe I was in Tampa at the time, which might have been the 29th place team. And I got traded to the Islanders, which is the 30th place team. And our only recollection of anything having to do with the Islanders was that walk across the cold, wet parking lot to Nassau Coliseum. We knew the building was going to be empty. And then you look at the roster that we had, it didn't look great. But then all of a sudden the next day, Pekka Yashin got traded there. Then everything kind of clicked. So we wanted to live close to the rink. We bought a place in Garden City. It was probably the closest I've ever lived to any arena out of all the cities I played in. So the commute was great. It was probably the first time I ever actually hung out with neighbors. For my years in Vancouver, we'd live in condos. You wouldn't see your neighbors. I didn't have kids yet. So I'd go to the rink. I'd hang out with my teammates. So I met some great neighbors in Long Island, and I still actually keep in touch with some of them. We do fantasy football. They're really good people. And then loved it. And then the lockout year came, and that's when we really fell in love with it, because we spent a whole year there just actually getting to enjoy everything about Long Island, with the beaches, the golf, even in the winter, just going into the city sometimes. And it truly was like an amazingly positive experience.
That's awesome. And speaking of living in Garden City, a little birdie told me that you live near the Millberries. There was a house rented over there by Bates, Cairns, Parrish, and Webb. Maybe you have any stories you can share? Maybe hanging out with those guys, having a good time off the ice?
Well, I was over there a few times, but a few times I walked over. At the time, I believe we just had our third child. Last year we had Alyssa, so I had 2 kids, and I'd walk over to the stroller, one of the baby Bjorn, and I had to think twice about going in through their door, because once you stepped in foot, like your feet might be stuck in something. I remember, I think they had 3 or 4 George Foreman grills that I don't even know if they used. That was the only way they could cook stuff. So a lot of times my wife and I, we were obviously good friends with those guys, and we would just have them come over to our house. It was so much easier, but a lot of late nights there, a lot of broken doors for some reason, because they seem to forget their keys every road trip. And luckily they were on the other side of town in Millbury, so they didn't really cross paths. But I used to bump into Mike quite a bit because our kids were at the same preschool together. So that was funny too.
And the thing about the Bates, Cairns, Parrish, Webb house that I'll never forget, and hopefully you could tell the fans, when they'd get back from a road trip, somehow between the 4 of them, none of them would have a key to get back in. So what was their solution to getting back in the house?
They did 2 different things. One, they broke down the door, and a lot of other times they would somehow break the garage door. Like, I would try to jimmy the lock, it wouldn't work, so they would probably Cairns or Webby, the 2 mutants, would just lift it and bust all the the joints and whatever. And then they would, honestly, I think they had someone on call the next day who would come and fix whatever they broke to get into their house.
Beauties. I love that. I love that.
And it was normal.
Bring a key, we'll just knock it out. We'll just knock it down. And then after practice the next day, we'll figure out.
And trust me, no one was going in and robbing them if you saw that house, or at least step foot in it.
A recurring theme here, and I've enjoyed having my friend Sean here, who's always been a huge fan of the team, getting to see this narrative, is players not wanting to leave this team, that there's a perception that maybe it's a place people don't want to come to, but players never want to leave. And I know very few people know, I know you shared this a little bit, that what people don't know is that you weren't going to leave, that the year before you wound up becoming an unrestricted free agent and signing elsewhere, you had a chance. Could you please share that with us and its impact on you, how you felt about it?
Yeah, well, it was definitely, a turning point in my career. I would say probably on the downside, because the next 2 years when I signed in Chicago were my 2 toughest years, probably just, injury wise, playing wise, team wise, and everything. So I love, as you know, I said earlier, I love my time with the Islanders. And I was pretty close to Mike, and I had a great relationship with Mike. So we were already working on, signing for the next year. And of course, they kind of came in kind of low. So it was very, I wouldn't say I was shocked, but it was a little disheartening. But Mike was like, and I don't know if everybody knows the stories about when, prior to me being there, Charles would negotiate contracts saying, we're going to pretend like we've already been negotiating for weeks or months. So when Charles gave a number, that was the last number. All right. My. So when Mike gave me a number, I was like, oh, I guess we're done. This isn't going to work. And that was prior to the lockout, where I still had arbitration rights. So I filed for arbitration. So I knew I was going to get a year out of it. And we knew that the lockout was coming. So it was hopefully not going to burn a year, but it ended up burning a full year. At the arbitration in Toronto, I met with Mike, just myself and my agent Larry Kelly, and we talked. Great. Like I said, I enjoyed talking with Mike. He was very honest with me all the time, and we actually hammered down a 4-year deal. And he honestly seemed to be as excited as I was, so it was great. He goes, I just need to call Charles. God rest his soul. He goes, I need to call Charles and just get the green light, because this is awesome. It's going to be great for the team, because I think a few other players were kind of waiting to see what happened with me. He calls Charles, and Charles goes, you know what? You're at arbitration. You're in Toronto. Why don't you just go through with it? And Mike explained to him, we're only going to get a year out of this. We could have him for 4 years. And Charles no, this seems like the league kind of can handle this. go to arbitration. Even in arbitration, Mike was actually, it's going to sound crazy, but he was almost arbitrating for me. Like the lawyers from the league were getting mad at him because he kept saying how much I meant to the team. And, because you've heard some of the stories about him making like Tommy Salo cry and all these other stories. He was actually great in arbitration. I get the 1-year deal. We go through the season. I remember at the time we weren't allowed to talk to owners, management, anything, but I would bump into Mike at our kids' daycare. So I'd still talk to him. And then when came time to sign, I think I got 17 teams that offered, and Mike came in at the lowest number again. And I was like, Mike, come on, like this is getting ridiculous. And then I had 5 teams that offered me the exact contract that I took with Chicago. And I told him that. And then he got mad because he's like, we would have matched it. And I'm like, would you? After I told him that I was signing with Chicago. So it was a little different, but I going back, boss, to what you were saying. Yes. If Charles would have taken that, I would have stayed with the Islanders gladly for 4 more years.
Well, Adrian, that's a little heartbreaking to hear from this fan's perspective.
Sean picked you on his all-time favorite Islander team.
This is true. Actually, I mean, now that we're there, so I was in college when you guys were, when that team kind of came to form, right? The 2001, 2002 and everything. And I actually played club hockey over at Hofstra next door. And I wore number 3 in honor of yourself. Yeah.
Yeah. Oh, wow. You're like, this is bringing me to tears right now. A true fan.
Do any of your children wear number 3?
Actually, you know what? They're all 33 because they remember me being 3, but so when I got traded to Chicago because of Keith Magnuson, nobody could have 3. Yeah. So I took 33. And then when I got to Calgary, I was going to take 3 again, but Dion Phaneuf was 3. Then I just ended up keeping 33, even though 3 was by far my favorite number. And it's funny because even like my son, my oldest boy who played in the USHL, they gave him 33. Like he didn't even ask for it. They're like, oh, your dad was 33. Then he's at Harvard now. They gave him 33. He never even asked for it. They just assume he's going to take it. And I was just talking to my middle boy this weekend. He's like, I think at some point I should change numbers. I'm like, absolutely. He goes, you're not mad? I'm like, no. He goes, I love 3. I'm like, and my middle boy loves the Islanders. He knows everything about them. He's a great little hockey player, but he's still he's like a stats guy too. So he knows everything. Actually, before coming on, we were driving back from Detroit today and I was grilling him on all the stats from the current team right now. And he knows everybody. It's awesome.
Yeah, Adrian, that was the first team in my fandom history as an adult that had any bit of success. So I fell in love with that team, and I'm a defenseman myself, so I was like, all right, number 3 it is, Adrian Aucoin. I love the game that you played, and I was a little heartbroken when you ended up leaving the team. So, thanks for sharing that story because I had no idea. Now I'm just even more upset about it. But
yeah. Well, I'll be honest, not that it wasn't fun, being a free agent, going to Chicago, right. It's always exciting, something like that, but it was heartbreaking. And my wife was heartbroken too, because we literally loved, like I said, we had 3 great hockey years. And then that lockout year, we had even more fun. Like it was such a fun year getting to know people and getting to know the community. It was definitely a little heartbreaking for us.
Hey, I got 2 quick ones for you, and I will let you go. I know
Sure.
You're an NFL guy, and you probably got something going on, fantasy or whatever, with this game here. So,
fantasy's over. Come on, bud.
I don't. What do I know? Favorite places on Long Island? Shinnecock. What else?
Well, one of my good buddies, Tommy from Deepdale. So Deepdale is like uber exclusive. Like I remember back then, they're like, oh, Trump wanted to join. They wouldn't let him join. And I actually didn't even golf there that much. He was a big fishing guy, and fishing is more my passion than golf. And he had a boat, and we would go fishing all the time. I remember he took my youngest, or at the time, my oldest boy was young back then, out fishing. And I would keep in touch with him. Even like when I'd go back to Long Island, sometimes we go fishing. So that was beautiful. Obviously, we go out on the East Coast, like in Shinnecock. So obviously, our practice goal at Garrett, he's one of the superintendents at Sabonic. So love going out there. Actually, it's funny you mentioned Hofstra. I probably ate at Hofstra Deli 3 days a week at least.
Hilarious.
Like at least there was that one, and there was the Garden City Deli, which I can't remember if that's the name of it. Those were the 2 places I would walk in and they actually knew who I was. It was funny. They'd always be like, oh, Adrian, how are you? And
nice.
The only other people that would always recognize me were Ranger fans for some reason. And they didn't like me though, but they recognized me.
That's pretty funny.
And lastly, back to some hockey advice. As a power play quarterback, I would imagine it would drive you crazy when the slump comes. Right now, the Islanders are something like 3 for 52, and everybody's counting. And I would imagine it gets tougher the more you're asked about it and talk about it and everything that you've gone through. And I'm sure you were through it with your team through the years. What would be your advice to Noah Dobson, to Ryan Pulock, to even Matthew Barzal to put this behind them?
Yeah, well, I mean, a little bit of different era, right? I mean, if you remember back in our days, you had me and Hammer just teeing up one-timers the whole time and guys getting out of the way. And to this day, I still love talking about Mark Parrish, who arguably was one of the best puck tipping players in the world. It's almost like he was just on a different, like he could see the puck coming in slow motion. Whether you had Yash or Pex or Batesy, the one year we had Kip Miller, you had Skatch, who was lined up as a shooter too. Like we were definitely a shooting power play. So different era. Now you see these goals. There's always a pass through the seam. It's backdoor. It's up top. It's over. The players are so much better now, moving the puck and seeing the ice and doing things. But that being said, sometimes you got to simplify, right? And when you have these D that can shoot the puck, sometimes just like blasting away and making them think about it a little bit, because then all of a sudden a lane opens up because they're expecting you to shoot. And I even with the kids that I coach nowadays, I'm like, if you take an early shot, all of a sudden you will see sometimes 2-3 guys trying to get in that lane, which opens up something else. And then it just kind of alleviates a little bit of the pressure.
Well, Adrian, outstanding stuff. Absolute pleasure having you on the show. Thank you so much. And please enjoy the rest of your night.
Well, thanks, Bots and Sean. Awesome meeting you, dude.
Thanks,
you too.
Adrian. Take care. My best for your family.
Have a good one.
All right. Thanks, guys.
You got it. All right, folks. That was the great Adrian Aucoin, former New York Islander, and as you all now know, a personal favorite of mine, number 3. So great to have him on. That was excellent.
Yeah, no, he's the best. I know when we first mentioned that he was coming on, to some fans were like, "Oh, it's not the time for a trip down memory lane." I'm like, we'll do a little
Chris,
of that, but
I will say you did a very good job kind of looping it into the current teams. It worked out very well.
And all of his answers about that were great. We're starting to forget that Pellick's out. I don't know when he's going to be back. The fact that he's skating, is a good sign.
Well, Dobson left the game early too yesterday.
Yeah, so they're going through it when it comes to that. But particularly on the power play, and I know it's something, but keeping it simple. The minute he mentioned Parrish, and I know Anders Lee's good at that. Mm-hmm. Matt Martin's pretty good at it. They have the guys. I would say that is one thing that's possibly missing, is this kind of more direct approach, hammer the shots. And Pulock and Dobson, they have 2 guys who can, and get back to real basics here.
Something's got to change. But it's funny because every now and then in these power plays, they look good. They look all right. They're moving the puck. They're getting chances. They're just not burying them. They're not finishing. And I guess it enhances that argument of they need a finisher. They need to bring a guy in.
Yeah. Since this is my first time doing the show, what happens next?
Oh, we're going to take a break now,
Okay,
Chris.
that's what I was
You look like
thinking.
you could use a break.
I could, for about just a minute or two.
All right, folks, I want to thank you all for tuning in to Hockey Night in New York here at twitch.tv/HockeyNightNY and your favorite podcast providers. We'll be right back.
New York Islanders fans, Sunday night is Hockey Night in New York. Whether you were raised at the barn in Uniondale or born in the stable at Belmont, tune in to Hockey Night in New York. Catch us live from Floored Media in Rockville Center, Sunday nights at 8 p.m. Eastern, as we cover all things Islanders at twitch.tv/HockeyNightNY. All episodes are also available on YouTube and all your favorite podcast providers. And for all you social butterflies, you can follow at HockeyNightNY on Twitter, Facebook, and Instagram for all the latest updates. Hockey Night in New York. The best night of the week for any Islanders fan. Hey there, welcome back. We missed you too. Now kick up your feet and settle back in to Hockey Night in New York.
Welcome back to the program, ladies and gentlemen. You are watching Hockey Night in New York at twitch.tv/HockeyNightNY, and we're going to jump right in to what's on tap. Another fun-filled week coming up for the New York Islanders. 4 games starting tomorrow. The Islanders go into Toronto to play the Maple Leafs. Maybe that's a game that wakes this team up. We shall see. They go into Ottawa on Wednesday. Then Friday, Saturday, back-to-backs back at home, Detroit and Vegas, before an 8-day break leading into February. So, Chris, that's what's on tap. What do you got?
Well, you bring up a great point about Toronto. As much as Ottawa and Detroit are the more beatable teams of that quartet there, Toronto does seem to bring out the best in them, almost more than the Rangers do lately.
Yeah.
It always gets Barzal going. So let's, we'll be hopeful. Let's put it this way. If they crap the bed, if they look uninspired against Toronto, okay, then I'm sorry, but maybe we could all regroup here on Tuesday, and I'll totally go back on my calm down, everybody. We got 30. That would be alarming. So let's see what happens. Talent does. The Islanders got by so much on structure and defense and effort, but a lot of teams have it. So when the talent is lacking, it's a problem, and that's what they're running into now against these better teams.
So let's talk about that point you just made. And they have this week. This is a big week for them. This is how they're going to close out January. Then you have an 8-day break, right? As I just said, you got the All-Star weekend coming up and all that. Now, let's say this is another week that just goes south again. They don't even get that 500. They don't get the 2-2. It's another bad week, 1-3, what have you. When does, because you're going to get into February then by the time the pucks drop on the next game. When does the narrative change? When is it okay to kind of start thinking about okay, maybe this team doesn't have it?
When is it okay? And obviously, in my opinion, because I don't speak for everyone. Of
course.
What will happen is if they get only 2, 3, or fewer points this week, is that the vultures will begin circling. It's a little bit different with Lou Lamoriello in that chair, say, versus Mike, versus Don Maloney, versus other people who've been in that chair, Garth. But all of a sudden, Lou will start to get calls from general managers generously looking to help him out.
Right.
By saying, I'll take Varlamov off your hands, but not offering equal value. Would you ever consider trading Brock Nelson? In my opinion, no, I would not. But there'll be a lot of that. But then the process starts. Might continue over All-Star break. Lou doesn't take any days off, so he's going to be available. He'll be working it. So sure, if they come up really short this weekend, I think the activity will happen. When it's okay for anybody to think what they want to think and feel what they want to think. This thing of kind of a Lou must go, and I get it. Right. I wrote 137 columns in like 43 days about how Garth Snow shouldn't be general manager anymore. So it would be pretty asinine for me to tell people
I read them.
that they can't chant Lou must go. All I'm saying is that was geared toward the end of the season, and thankfully, I don't mean that in a vicious way. It was the right thing happened, and Garth went. Lou is not going anytime soon. So when is it the right time? Listen, I don't think they're going to be a disaster this week. I think they're going to show some signs, and really all that is 4 points, which is not too much to ask, at least 4 points. But then we'll regroup there. We'll also have to think about what we want to do with this little hockey show with them not having a game for a week and all that stuff.
Yeah, we're going to talk about that. We're going to figure that out. Everything's going to be fine.
Okay, I'm sure it will be. I have no doubt it will be.
But no, look, I understand that the situation's fluid and it depends on where they're on the standings, how many points they're either in or out and all that. But, eventually that's, something that Lou's going to have in the back of his head. Like, okay, it's time to shift gears a little bit here.
I saw Kevin Kurz respond to a fan on Twitter who just said, when you're only 3 points out of a playoff spot, this is not how it works. In terms of breaking up everything. I get it, because the spirit of the fans, rightfully so, is that it looks like we're starting to see enough to be convinced that whatever magic Mr. Trotz had and this team had, those 2 glorious seasons, even 3 really, if you want to count Barry's first 3, is no longer there. So I totally get that reality hitting and why that is sad, disappointing, frustrating. This team is life for a lot of people. God bless. I totally get that. So, but what's going to happen? Listen, I was on Twitter a lot last night, and when they tied it up 2-2, it was it was a lot of rejoicing.
Right.
So I I get it, though.
Oh,
That's
yeah.
the nature
The
of it.
fans are ready to jump back on, but
Yeah.
they just haven't given a reason to do it over the last week at least.
Yeah.
And that's the problem.
I get it.
Yeah, for sure. All right, so I think that'll do it for What's on Tap. So why don't we swing right into Hero of the Week, Ed? Ladies and gentlemen, when you hear this song, that means it's time for Hero of the Week, brought to you by the Blue Line Deli and Bagels Half-Price Hero, which this week is the Hockey Night in New York, featuring grilled chicken, buffalo sauce, fresh mozzarella, avocado in a wrap, delicious, named after this wonderful show. Stop on in to the Blue Line Deli and Bagels flagship location in Huntington, mention Hockey Night in New York, and get half off the Hockey Night in New York. Now, as I said, folks, this is the first show where the Islanders have not won a game in the games leading up to the show.
This season.
This season, correct. So there's really no heroics to dole out.
But Ed hit that spot.
You know what? He's in the running.
So I
He
wasn't
is in the running.
I'm in the running.
I wasn't going to have a hero, but I'm saying like when you play that back tomorrow, he just fucking nailed that.
He was at the ready.
Yeah.
I mean, he was sleepy last week, and now he's at the ready this week.
I was like, oh.
Must be that kombucha drink you were drinking before.
We didn't have apple pie, but I damn sure made it work.
But as for you, Sean, do you have a hero of the week?
So I think collectively we can go with this, and I actually kind of tongue-in-cheekly, if that's a phrase, last night after the loss said, all right, guys, nominees for the hero of the week. I threw it out to Twitter, and there was a majority response, and that was Islander fans for putting up with the dreck that has been the Islanders lately. And you know what? We're going to throw it out to the New York Islander fans. Folks, listen, they opened up the new building. You guys packed it out. You sold out season tickets in the first year. It was obviously it was a rough debut. Now they're kind of going through it a little bit right now this season, kind of hanging the balance here. We don't know if it's going to go one way or the other. Hopefully we can keep some positivity. Hopefully they can pick up a couple of points this week.
So I went to 3 games last year.
Keep interrupting me, Chris.
I thought you were done.
I wasn't.
Oh, so go ahead. Finish.
Go ahead.
So my question for you is, but I haven't been to a game yet this year. I'm going to be getting there soon. What regardless of whatever they say the attendance is, paid attendance, 100%, 97%, whatever it is, overall, what would you say it's looked like during the season in terms of volume of fans and also enthusiasm?
There have been a couple of nights where you could tell there was some empty seats, but I would say the majority of games that I've gone to, they fill up even if it's not right away.
That's great.
Yeah.
It's sometimes tough to tell on TV.
Last night was a good turnout. There was a lot of fans in the seats last night.
And that's impressive because the football giants were having a game. I was actually thinking maybe there would be some no-show.
Yeah, from what I saw, it looked like it was pretty filled up. If you guys want to contradict me in the chat, let me know. Yeah. But it looked full up to me. But, you know, it's interesting you ask about the enthusiasm. I don't hear as many "Let's Go Islander" chants as I used to. I can say that. Now,
and
maybe,
you don't just mean these last 2 weeks.
Generally speaking. I think this season, I haven't heard. Now, look, maybe it's going on in another corner of the building and I'm not hearing it. Sometimes you kind of need more people to get involved. But I think that kind of speaks to what I'm trying to say here, is that the chants aren't filling the building as much as I can remember. And I understand it. I mean, look, it's tough to get a chant going when you're trailing, or when you're down, and you give up a couple of goals, of course. But it has been a little different. But the fans are still showing up. And look, you know as well as I do, they're just waiting for the wins, and they're waiting to jump back in. And hopefully they give them a reason to.
Yeah, I think in terms of the sound, it's always been natural. Every time a team gets a new building, because they're so cushy in some ways. That the reason why I asked you about the attendance is sometimes when the games come on, at least a few minutes into the period, it still looks like there's empty seats, but behind the benches, and I know those people have access to clubs or they're at that bar right at center ice, so it's tough to judge. But you know, it's good to see that the fans are showing up, the enthusiasm's there, and I really look forward to checking it out myself. One little side note, and maybe a lot of people did point this out. Didn't it seem like I don't want to make a too big a deal of this. I'm just fascinated from a front office perspective. Isn't it a little bit of a disconnect to have Eddie Westphal, Bobby Nystrom, all those guys drop the puck? It's alumni night, and they wore the fisherman jersey?
No, they wore the white homes.
Last night?
Yeah.
Oh.
They did not wear the fisherman.
Oh, okay.
They wore the white. In fact,
then that explains it.
Every alumni that they had there last night was wearing and I said white homes, the white roads now. But yeah, they wore the white jerseys.
Oh, that's funny. I saw a picture and it just made me think that they were in the fisherman. I was like,
no, but to your point on the disconnect though, is that they only had, the elder alumni come out for the puck drop. They didn't bring any more of the current alumni out. Now, whether that's a good thing or not, I mean, I don't really care.
Well, maybe they just,
you.
they could only have so many people out on the ice after the season.
Right, they could have picked and chose a couple from here and there, but they did have a good turnout. They had basically a whole row of players from each decade. They honored them basically during every commercial break.
And I saw Kasperitis there and Delgar. It's just nice to see different people there. I think what maybe would throw me off, I'd seen a picture of like Nye and Casper on the train, and Sparky, I think, was wearing the fisherman jersey.
It's okay. We all make mistakes.
That's what threw me off. I'm totally glad to be wrong. Cut this out of the podcast if you can. Thank you.
No, we're going to keep that. We're going to keep your mistake. That's for sure. So, folks, Islander fans, we salute you. Hopefully, the Islanders get it back together, so you're rooting a little louder. But, yes, through thick and thin, you guys have, especially you diehards out there, you're always there. So, big salute to Islander fans, and hopefully we're saluting some players next week because they actually did something good this week. So there you have it. Hero of the week. Stop in to the Blue Line Deli and Bagels flagship location in Huntington. Mention Hockey Night New York and get half off the Hockey Night in New York wrap. And with that, let's go straight to Questions Brewing. Look at you, buddy.
It's time for Questions Brewing.
I love it.
Brought to you by Lost Farmer Brewing Company.
So first and foremost, Ed, Jay, how we doing over there, guys?
We're doing great.
Yeah?
It's a good night.
Excellent.
Everything's
Excellent.
nice.
Feeling spry? Feeling good?
Yes.
Excellent. Love to hear that. Nice
Shout out
there,
to
Jay.
Jay's Thumb.
Yes. How's the chat looking? We got some questions?
We have very few questions. We are active, but to me, it's more of a frustrations brewing tonight.
Understood.
Than a
a little
questions
venting
brewing.
session.
Yeah, it's a venting session.
Got
for
it.
Sure.
Okay.
I'm sorry. I need to stop for a second.
You got some questions on Twitter, right?
Look,
what do you got?
What is that?
That's a clip from last night's game, right?
Yeah.
What are they wearing?
The Islanders themselves are wearing the fishermen. Yes,
That's what I meant.
I thought you meant the alumni. You're talking about
nice from in a
Westfall.
fisherman jersey.
Oh my
That's
God!
what I meant.
Well, look, Chris. Now you're redeemed.
Do you not think
You're
that?
redeemed.
You don't think that's a bit odd? They scheduled the games. They knew that was going to be alumni night.
Okay.
You don't think it's a little bit odd that of the 50-year history, they wore the current team wore the jersey, the throwback jersey that the team wore for a year and a half or whatever it was.
I could see why you, probably involved in those decisions, would look at it that way. I completely get that, but that did not even occur to me.
Okay.
Didn't bother me at all.
To the fans in chat, what did you think of the team wearing the fisherman jersey last night? Give it to me straight. No big deal. That's fine. It's not a big deal. I just think it's an odd disconnect.
We'll see if we have opinions by the end of this.
Okay.
But we're going to kick it off with T-Boyle 13. T-Boyle 13.
He's like Stan Fish with the Questions Brewing. He always gets the first question. I love it.
Yeah. All right. So T-Boyle 13 says, I know it doesn't happen often, but could you see Aho playing forward?
No.
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 I don't think so.
No, I do not.
I think besides
Who is-
and by the way, they have done that before. Berard
Hickey did it.
Played.
Berard did it. Hickey did it briefly.
Yeah. I think they like Sebastian Aho very much. Some struggles, like everybody else in these last 9+ games aside. But no, I don't see that. They need him on D. One thing I've started to see, and I'll always say I'm not the analyst here, so I'm always interested in what fans are saying. Fans have been down on Scott Mayfield lately.
He's had some rough games.
What say you?
I say, as a fan, Chris, I say that, yeah, he actually has had some rough games.
Sorry to hear that.
Which...
No, really.
Which I'm trying to remember which night it was, but me being the sarcastic individual that I am, I said that he scored the first. It was that goal. It was that game where he scored the first goal. It was like a floater, and he ended up having a rough game that night. He had a couple of giveaways, and he led basically a play or two that he made led to some goals against it. Essentially, helped them in losing that game. And I think he's had a recent stretch where it's been a little rough for him, or maybe even taken some undisciplined penalties that he hasn't needed to. So look, I'm not trying to get on the guy's back or anything. I like Scott Mayfield, but he has had a couple of rough games here.
Okay.
Yeah.
I wonder if he will be traded, regardless of how the team.
And
does.
Tom, I get where the question's coming from because Aho has shown more offensive ability and maybe a little rough around the edges on the defensive side, especially with that giveaway that he had last night against Carolina. That was kind of a backbreaker goal for them. But I think when with all things being with equal and normal, that he's going to remain a defenseman. Next up,
we need to see Ratu moved up and see more playing time.
Tom also said in all caps, "Fire Lou." So that's for Mr. Bada.
Sure.
Yeah.
That sounds on brand for Tom
Yes.
Boyle.
Just every week we gotta let him know.
I get it. It's
I'm turning this
conversation
one
for the offseason.
This
The Islanders
next
will
one
have.
is
Scott Malkin will make that decision by himself, and it it could happen in the offseason.
Right. This next one I'm going to turn into a questions Bruin. New Wave Halifax says a lot of the players wanted to be unleashed from Trotz's defense first system. Well, how's that working out for you, Matt Barzal?
I think that's a beautiful point from the man from Halifax. All that stuff is such garbage. And by the way, we should be clear that that's been rumored, right? And sometimes these things that become rumored then become fact. Like fans would say, well, didn't you hear the players wanted Trotz to, wanted out from Trotz, whatever. It always comes back to bite you. The Islanders, after their second season of Laviolette, they and Peter knows this, is fairly well documented, had things to say about Peter, and Peter was let go. And it's unfortunate. Peter wasn't going to be coach for his team for 20 years. He deserved to be coached longer.
Agreed.
I thought he didn't deserve to be fired, of course. But where does that get you? And by the way, this goes on everywhere. This isn't an Islanders thing.
Look what happened up in Vancouver.
Yeah. Well, it's absurd. And by the way, I still, and the Bruce Boudreau thing is beyond absurd, but I still think of Travis Green, partially because we know him, but he was just a year ago, and Boudreau did okay in the beginning, and then things went bad. It's nice to see dysfunction elsewhere.
Yeah.
I know it's starting to creep in a little bit. The Islanders, I consider it more bad luck. I used the DeFore thing as an example. I didn't see anybody complain about them calling up DeFore the day it was. In fact, I saw a lot of celebration. By the end of the game, it didn't go well. It went about as badly as possible.
Yeah, I was going to bring that up.
At least they cut it off, and they sent him back.
Right.
And that'll probably be it for a little while.
Right. But if he doesn't develop, everybody's gonna point to that.
I'll say GMs and coaches, they get hot and cold hands just like players do. And I think they're in the middle of something where things just aren't working out. They need a turn in fortune, and perhaps it'll come this week. But we'll see. I know that hope is not a strategy.
Excellent. Mike 4652. Comparing the times when the Isles were winning games by constant hustle, forecheck, and desperation, the current team doesn't look anything like that. Care to speculate why?
So let me ask you, thank you for the question, and I'll ask this of Sean. Do you think that work ethic and hustle is a problem with this team?
I don't think it's work ethic and hustle. I think it's a combination of not being able to finish. I think it's also just they have opened up the offense, or tried to, I should say, and it's also allowed for a little bit of liability on the defensive side of things. And I mean that not only the defenseman literally, but also on the forward end of things. And they've kind of gotten in their own way with where you see some of these plays where they're not marking the right guy, and it's more of a brain fart or a missed assignment. Like you had a little scramble even last night in the game where a guy gets left open in the slot or just in front of the net, and you're saying where's the coverage there? And sometimes that just comes with tracking the puck, following the guy who has the puck, and losing sight of the guy in your periphery or behind you that you're supposed to be marking in front of the net. And I think we've seen a little more of that this year than we did under Trotz. I think that's been a little more of a problem for this team, where, I overuse the phrase well-oiled machine during the success of the Barry Trotz years, and they really were. Like they knew where to be, where to go, how to mark their guys. And look, it became kind of like an art form for that team where they knew how to just shut down the other team's offense, where even if they were getting opportunities in their own, against in their own zone, they were pretty quick out heading the other way. Or if maybe even they were even thwarting the chances in the neutral zone. The fact of the matter is that they just did a much better job of kind of playing the puck back the other way. Whereas with this version of the team, and certainly last year's version of the team, they just kind of end up getting in their own way. They're spending more time in their zone, and it just looks more like missed marks. But I don't think there's a lack of effort. I don't think there's a lack of desire or hustle. I think these guys are coming prepared to play the game. But it's so funny. Like I'll see on social media, they'll show pictures of warm-ups, and the Islanders will say, ready to go tonight. And I'll be like, are you? After all those first periods, I'd be like, might not be the best phrasing you want to use here, especially with all these bad first periods that you had. But, coming out slow in the first period aside, I don't literally think that these guys are dogging it.
Mm-hmm. I'm intrigued by something. Barry Trotz is not coming back this season. We had some fun a few weeks ago where I brought up about how he would be the best available coach in the offseason. And I know it's well documented. It's well documented that he has said himself that he would like to have some interest in player personnel, not necessarily be a GM. I've never heard him say that. But before this slide, Lamoriello did interviews, and so did Barry Trotz, where they both said they said that they were remained good friends, that it was a positive experience, and they both said, Trotz in particular, that he talks to Lou regularly. Now, add
post.
Correct. He continues to do present.
Okay.
I'm giving you this for a fact. These are things that have been said and are happening. We also know that Lane and Barry are close. Yeah. That there was no breakup. When Trotz left Washington, it was pretty clear with Todd Reardon, who wound up replacing him, including not the warmest of handshakes after he beat Reardon's team. That there was, but that's not what's going on here. They are friends. They are so on a day like today, for example, or if they can get through this week during the long week off, like I would think that he's getting paid. Barry is not obligated to this, but what the hell is he talking to Lou Lamoriello about, right? Like, if they're talking regularly,
tea times.
Let's say Lou doesn't do that for starters, and like you would think they would talk hockey, so they'll never say this publicly, but you would like to think, just like Lou Lamoriello, we've mentioned this several times before, has always leaned on Jacques Lemaire as an advisor.
Right,
he's an advisor for the coaching aspect. Let's be honest.
Yeah.
That Barry Trotz, might have some recommendations or is going to, and you should absolutely utilize them. He's under contract.
Well, listen, Chris, I know you don't really generally agree with this, because I know we kind of touched on it a while ago, but I'm still not convinced that was strictly just a Lou Lamoriello was firing Barry Trotz. I'm still not convinced that that's the case. I still think that there was maybe a little more to that we'll probably never hear about. And again, maybe I'm tinfoil hatting this a little bit, but I think Barry might have had something to do with that decision. And maybe that's why they still talk.
Yeah. And I don't know what else to say on that. It's another thing that the fans love to throw back at me. You don't know they had an agreement. Barry needed time away. Yeah. Barry, do you explain the fact that Barry went on coaching job interviews in the weeks after that with more than a few teams? I get it. He didn't take the Winnipeg deal. The idea that he's from there doesn't necessarily. He's got a home in Tennessee now. Like he loves Winnipeg. He doesn't necessarily want to work there. But his actions after, I never believed that. I thought it was it's just something that fans invented and became something that took on a life of its own. Has never been verified, even in the closest. And then he went on job interviews.
Okay. Fair enough.
If Philadelphia gave him everything he wanted, which my guess would be 5 years and a shit ton of money and player personnel responsibility. In other words, you can't have Paul Holmgren and Bobby Clark and all the alumni who were still working in this organization around. I'm just saying that.
Sure.
If they had given it to him, he was going to take it. He's got better things to do than go on job interviews and waste people's time. So.
Okay.
And selfishly, part of me was hoping he would take another job just so we could end that speculation. But I respect your point of view, Sean, as I do
Chris.
All the fans as well.
That's very nice of you. Thank you so much. Ed, do we have any other questions remaining in Questions Brewing?
Well, I'd like to tie this up potentially with the jury on the fisherman that we were just talking about.
Oh, okay. So great.
We're gonna start off with CGS 878. Says alumni love that fisherman piece of shit. But we don't.
And the alumni don't. The alumni don't.
Okay.
Going right into it. Don't like this version of the fisherman at all.
Okay.
New Wave Halifax.
Okay.
T. Boyle says the fisherman is starting to grow on me.
Hey, there we go.
Fisherman
All right,
starting
coming
some
around.
lights.
Coming
Lights.
around.
But Coach Lambert coming in. I agree. Fish stick jersey was an odd choice for last night.
Okay.
Yeah.
Bizarre.
It just seemed
Yeah, until you raised the point. I didn't even think of it. I mean, it makes sense. I get where you're coming from. That totally makes sense. But like, you know, it just didn't even strike me until you brought it up. Like, it just happened to be the night where they decided to throw on the fisherman jerseys. I don't even know, you know, what's the rhyme or reason behind choosing the nights for that.
You
anyway.
have all these cup winners and Ed Westfall, who's kind of, you know, wasn't exactly on that team, but they're all lined up for the ceremonial face-off in their jersey. They're basically the jersey they won the 4 straight Stanley Cups in, and the current Islanders sitting there in the fisherman jersey just seemed really odd to me. And there's no reason for that. There's no excuse or reason for that disconnect. They knew when the alumni were coming. Those things are mapped out months in advance.
Okay.
Yeah, I would say that's just a merchandise choice, like promoting merch.
I mean, every time they wear
about
it is. But there are other games.
I'll tell you what. Even though the majority of the few guys that we have in the chat there, it is selling like hotcakes because I'm seeing it all over the concourse, in the stands.
I love it.
It is embraced.
But that wasn't my argument. That's all cool and great.
This is an aside.
It was literally just like, why that night? If you're wearing it 8 times or something like that at home, why that night? That's
okay. So, Ed, that'll do it for Questions Brewing.
We can get one more in if we have the time.
If you got it,
all right.
Sure.
Well, New
Real
Wave
quick.
Halifax got in another one.
Okay, sure.
I turned his Matt Barzal thing into a question earlier. Can the Islanders still play shut down D to keep Toronto to 3 or fewer goals this week?
It sounds like our man from Halifax is thinking about putting money on the game. That's what that sounds like.
Maybe.
It's a very specific question.
Can they make the under? Is the question.
Do you think total they could hold to 5.5 goals?
Right.
Go ahead.
Can they? Yeah. Lately,
who's playing goal?
No.
There you have it.
No. I don't know. Actually, I don't know who's playing goal, but I think they go back to Sorokin. That poor man.
The back-to-backs are not until Friday, Saturday, right? They're Friday, Saturday at home. So it's Monday, Wednesday, Friday, Saturday.
Yes,
okay?
Yeah. So
I mean,
despite the losses, Sorokin's playing well.
You have to go with your number one for 3 of those games.
And you saw those numbers when they were last pointed out. I think that changes after last night. But at one point they were 5-4-4, and his numbers are off the charts. I mean, he's got 9 losses, 8 losses, or whatever it was, giving up 2 or less goals. And
Congratulations to him and to Brock Nelson, 2 very deserving All-Stars. So I actually think they got it right.
Yeah.
The fans, the league, I thought they got it right.
Agreed.
Those 2 guys deserve to be there.
So that'll do it for Questions Brewing. Thanks so much for chiming in, hanging out with us. That was a lot of fun. And that's going to do it for the show as well. So, Ed, cue it up, man. Let's get out of here. All right, folks, I want to thank you all for tuning in to Hockey Night in New York here at twitch.tv/HockeyNightNY, and, of course, your favorite podcast providers later on. A huge thanks goes out to Adrian Aucoin for joining us tonight. Excellent spot from him. Fantastic. And, of course, a huge thanks to our sponsors, starting with Blue Line Deli and Bagels, flagship location located at 718 West Jericho Turnpike in Huntington. Check them out at BlueLineDeli.com. A big thanks to Lost Farmer Brewing Company located at 63A 2nd Street in Mineola. Check them out at LostFarmerBrewingCompany.com. And a big thanks to Main Street Board Game Cafe located at 307 Main Street in Huntington Village. Check them out at MainStBoardGameCafe.com. Chris, once again, where can we find you on Twitter?
At Chris Bada, NHL.
You can find me at Shawnee Hockey. You can find the show at Hockey Night NY at Twitter, Facebook, Instagram, and TikTok if you're into that sort of thing. Remember, folks, if you dig what we're doing here, rate, review, subscribe, tell your friends, spread the word, let them know that Hockey Night in New York is the place to be for Islander Talk here every week, Sunday nights at Floored Media in Rockville Center. For Jay, for Ed, for Mr. Chris Bada, my name is Sean Cuthbert. We've been Hockey Night in New York. Have yourselves a great rest of your Sunday night.